All right, hello everybody. Welcome once again. It's a pleasure to be here with you, going over some three little small case studies, but these small case studies have produced some really big results on here. It's one of our students, Justin Wagner, and Eddie. You know Justin very well. Has been with you for quite some time now, right?
I do. Justin is from Ohio. He's been a note school student for many years, and he was able to make a shift and now do this business now for quite a few years full time. So it's pretty good to see somebody start out and say, "Can I do it?" and then they progress to, "I'm doing it" on a part-time basis, and then they're like, "I'm really doing it" on a full-time
Yeah,
basis. So anyway,
exactly. And
he's a good guy, a really good guy.
Right, I totally agree, and I know one of the things that always a lot of investors looked at with Justin in particular was the fact that he started with these small notes, and that's kind of been his niche. But he's so good and trained now through us that he knows how to look at these and think in terms of how am I getting in and what's my exit strategy out, and really putting the whole thought process together. So that's one aspect everybody's going to see from this. The other aspect is, so many people think it takes a lot of money, like you have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to get in the note business, and that's just not the case today, because what we've put together where people have the ability to buy these one-off notes, they absolutely can start with a small seed capital and really build into something. So that's another lesson that's going to come out of this concept, and or out of these transactions, I should say. But I picked these three that he had, and certainly Justin does more than this per year. But if this is all somebody did, was do 3 deals a year like this, and I'm not suggesting that's all anybody does, by the way, but if that's all you did, you can see that because of the depth of the knowledge that he now has in this business, he's able to take these small ones, run them through some scenarios, and really set himself up in the back on the back end and exiting out of these things. And I think everybody will be pretty impressed by these 3 case studies.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about it, and I'm ready to get started. One point I wanted to make, Kevin, before we, kind of get off into the specifics. I've used this analogy before, or I think all of us have, but looking at these deals is kind of like a Rubik's cube. And once you get to where you can do the combination and you understand kind of how it works, you can walk yourself out of a ton of deals because you're just thinking like that deal architect, and I think that's what you alluded to earlier. Justin now just can look at a deal, and he doesn't. When he started with me, his family they had a lot of rental property. He was a kind of a fix and flip guy, and he was very sticks and bricks oriented. I mean, he understood sticks and bricks. He understood property, but he didn't understand the finance side. Now his mind works differently. So,
Yeah,
all right, let's get started.
absolutely. Yeah, this is a small home, as you can see, a single-family residential in Cleveland, Ohio, and older home. And as we've seen so many times, that these BPOs that were coming in because of the distressed sales, those sorts of things, this property value came in really just under, somewhere around $5,000. We'll see on the next slide here, but I just want to point this one out. This is just a little home in your everyday working class neighborhood. You can see the property's an average for this market, doesn't have any major features that differentiate it from any of the subject comparable sales. Property condition is average. Property showing well, is not requiring a whole lot of repairs. So a 1,200 square foot home in this area, and I pulled up the rent-o-meter you can see in the center on the bottom there, and that indicates that this property would rent somewhere around, on average, $650 per month, which again is very, very strong rent, especially when you consider, look at this BPO value that they came up with here, $5,000. I mean, it's just, how is a property worth only $5,000 if it'll rent for $650 a month and it doesn't require a whole lot of repairs?
Well, what's happened is this. These houses were, most all of them were sold in MLS. It wasn't the consumer listing a house with a realtor and the realtor selling it to a consumer and them getting financing, right? The neighborhood you live in, Kevin, people buy a house, and when they get ready to sell it, they call a realtor, and the realtor puts it on the market and puts it in MLS, and the buyer that comes along is going to buy your house. They're going to The odds are very high they're going to go out and get a traditional mortgage, right?
Right.
So the consumer lists it with a realtor. The realtor sells it to another consumer, and they get financing, right? That's not what this is. In fact, in the market today, if you're looking at an asset that the BPO is under, BPO meaning broker price opinion, just realtor's opinion of value. If you're looking at a house today, Kevin, and it's probably under 60,000, it's all the comparable sales are going to be cash sales, because you and I know you're not going to go get a mortgage for $40,000 today because of Dodd-Frank.
Right. Exactly.
And so what's happened is low price band property has become a subset of the market, and unfortunately, it's a cash market, and the people that are paying cash for them are not the consumers; they're in the investors. So it's one of the reasons that I've had a lot of heart for, trying to get this Dodd-Frank repealed off of seller financing, and we're getting that done, by the way, and we need your help to do it. But the reality is when we talk to the lawmakers and the politicians in Washington, D.C., and we're like, listen, you meant for Dodd-Frank to protect these guys, but the reality is it stopped them from getting a mortgage. Because many years ago, Kevin, you could just go to a finance company and borrow money to buy a house like this.
Right.
And now you can't, and now we're in a cash market. And that is, I'm just sort of expounding on why there's this crazy diversity, and looking at this house that would rent for $650 a month and scratching your head going, how in the world could it only be worth $5,000?
Exactly, and there were wild swings in some parts of the country, and obviously Ohio and parts of Cleveland were a part of this, that were up in value, and then when the market came crashing down, it really affected what the perceived value is through comparable sales, what these things are worth. And so I totally concur with what you're saying, because these people still owed a lot of money on this property here. But when Justin came in to buy this property, believe it or not, he paid $500 for that non-performing loan.
That's too much.
Yeah, not enough. Yeah,
now, this is an extraordinary case, by the way. I want to make sure that everybody's clear about this. Are we saying that this is an extraordinary case, and so it's a true case, but it's an extraordinary case, and so we're not telling you to come to note school because you can buy every non-performing note for $5,000 or $500 that rents for $650 a month, because that's not true at all, and we're not saying that.
Right.
But we are saying these are real numbers on this deal.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and these folks in here really wanted to stay in the house, but once again, they owed so much money as to compared to what the house is worth today. They ran into some financial difficulties. They're in that position of limbo where they're not hearing anything from the lender, and when they do, they follow up on some things, and then they never hear from them again. And they kind of ended up, this note ended up in some big portfolio on a banker's desk, and they just lumped it in and said, let's get rid of this, let's sell it. And ultimately that's what happened. But what Justin was able to do is come in here and work with these folks and open up that line of communication to a point that the banks never get to. And then he also understood that because so many people in Ohio were affected by the financial crash, that they have these hardest hit funds there. And the goal behind the hardest hit funds is to keep these people in the home. And in this case, it was a little different than what we've seen in hardest hit funds before, where they'll help somebody catch up and then make their mortgage payments going forward with them. In this case, when the department in Ohio looked at this, they said the only way we could make this work is if the lender is willing to take a short payoff. And that's ultimately what they did on this one. And for those who are not familiar with that, it's almost like a short sale. When you hear short, it means somebody's willing to take less than what they are owed on this. So they look at this individual deal. They wanted to help these people stay in there, as Justin did, and the state of Ohio, through these federal funds with hardest hit funds, paid Justin $35,000 to forgive the rest of the loan. So we took a $500 investment on the note, opened up the line of communication with these folks, established the fact that they wanted to stay in there, and then found the solution to what that could be. Now, of course, he thought of that solution going in. He saw all the signs that these folks indicated that they wanted to stay there, and what you always like to call, Eddie, that emotional equity.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And just to clarify, because some of you that haven't been down the road in this business as far as we have, this is an example of a couple of things. First of all, the $5,500 value, the BPO, that was just a realtor's opinion of value. Now, the joke has been said before, Kevin, that half of these BPOs are done in a foreign country by a virtual assistant. So
right, just crunching numbers from the database.
So clearly, the state of Ohio ordered their own evaluation of the property, and they used more variables than just a quick, $60 broker price opinion to come up with what they thought, would be a fair discounted payoff of the loan. So does that mean, Kevin, that Justin picked through and found a deal with an inordinately low BPO and he zapped up the opportunity?
Oh, that's exactly it. It's going through and learning that process of due diligence and learning how to look at all the numbers and do some additional math in there to start to see the relationship between the numbers. And that's, I think, a big component. Sometimes people just look at static numbers, but they never take a good look at the overall relationship between those numbers and start to then think of, okay, what's my plan A, B, and C? Because certainly this was the best plan for everybody involved here. And that's ultimately what happened. But Justin, of course, had in the back of his mind, if this doesn't work out, what are some other things that we can do? So he's always looking at the two components in this industry, which is, of course, is the numbers have to make sense, but as we like to say, the flavor of the deal too, the people behind it.
What we're saying is because of this broker price opinion that came in inordinately low, that was to Justin's advantage, but we all know, common sense tells us that really did not control this investment.
That's correct, yeah. And I just pulled a copy of the of how these work. It's called the Dream in Ohio, and how they help people out there. And they give these conditional grants to pay off the lender. And the goal, of course, is these folks stay in the home for a certain period of time. They have no payments on this grant. And once they stay in there after a certain amount of time, which is normally about 5 years, depending upon the state, then the loan just automatically goes away. So it's truly win-win, because now these folks living in that home, they are paying property taxes once again, which is good for the county. They're taking care of the home once again, which is good for all the other property values on there. So these funds do a good service for really everybody in that whole neighborhood to get these homes back in good condition, and also helps the counties out because it becomes a productive property in the form of property taxes. So that's just a quick look at what those look like. All right, so that's one great example there. Let's take a look at another one here. This is a place in Toledo, Ohio. Again, about the same, about 1,200 square feet. A little older homes, very common throughout these parts of Ohio. Second home from the corner on a busy road with commercial buildings. Subject has nice curb appeal, appears to be maintained, which again indicates, look, these folk got into some financial difficulties, but they're maintaining this home in a fashion that indicates they want to stay. The problem is the lender hasn't taken the time to work with them, and they're just kind of in that position of, we don't know what's happening, but we're going to try to stay here as long as we can. Hopefully something works out, but we're going to maintain the home and we want to stay. And that's, again, all those bits and pieces add up to that story of these folks have this emotional equity. But look at the rent once again in this area. Now you're looking at about $769 per month in rent. The evaluation, once again, came in, let's call it $14,000, $15,000 on there for this home that would rent for, what did I just say there, 700, what's the wrong one? 769, yeah, per month.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, when you start to look at these numbers and see these relationships, it does start to tell you, let me explore this a little bit deeper. There's something here.
Yeah. It's there's no doubt, and once again, this is an extraordinary case. Okay, so we picked these cases that Justin had, all of which are his real numbers, but it just shows you what you can do. Now, Justin, would love to buy 5,000 of these assets, and not every asset he's bought has been that good. But the reality is there is a pattern to it, this business, and that is, I have made a lot of statements this year, Kevin, like state of the industry, like where's the market going, and I have several like trade shows that I'm going to speak at this fall that I'm going to do kind of the same thing. So people ask me, where do you see the market going? And I think most real estate, Kevin, today is most higher end real estate is possibly overpriced. But I say the low price band, and I'm going to say that's really below 100,000. The low price band is underpriced, and the reason it's underpriced is for exactly what you're seeing right here. Because its rentable value far exceeds what just some realtor goes and finds cash sales in MLS, and they just throw out a broker price opinion. Now, once again, when you're buying assets at a percentage of BPO, is it to Justin's advantage for this BPO to be low?
Oh, you bet, big time.
So once again, that's how it works. And the lowest price band, which is what you've seen on these case studies, had the deepest discount. So as you go up the scale and price band, that percentage discount gets not so much. But right now, these $15,000 asset, and he's paying $4,000 for it.
Yeah, which is again, like I said, extraordinary example. And on that same topic too, I heard you explain it this way at least one time, Eddie, and I thought it was well, it resonated with me as sure it did for a lot of other people. Where yes, this is an extraordinary example, but we do have quite a number of these extraordinary examples. But we always tell people, look, if it's like baseball, first of all, you got to get up to the plate. You got to be able to get up there and take a swing. But you also focus on the base hits. You focus on base hits, and you can do very, very well in this business. And you know what? Every once in a while, you're going to get a double. Every once in a while, a triple, a home run, and then the grand slam. So the thing is being in there where we don't have people just focus on looking at these extraordinary ones here. It's doing this on a regular basis, and these things will absolutely appear. And that's what we said with Justin. I mean, he's built up some nice portfolios on notes, and these are ones that he pulled and said, well, I did really good on these. Let me send these in to you.
Well, and that's the case. I mean, Justin's done a few hundred deals at this point. So Justin obviously is going to have 10 or 15 or 20 deals with just extraordinary stuff. And we ask him for that. And we're doing it just because, it's we don't always do this, but we thought we would focus today on, let's see what a slam dunk deal looks like. Let's see what a deal that is so good that you don't need a calculator for, right?
Right. And he did. I'm sorry. He does focus in certain areas where he knows there's more benefits on the exit strategy than is. And as you said in the beginning, he happens to live in Ohio, but Ohio is one of those states that we have students from everywhere in the U.S. that focus on Ohio, because there are certain advantages there. There are market conditions like this that gravitate towards higher profit deals. And when you add in the hardest hit fund aspect on top of that, because Ohio is one of those states that just got another part of that $1 billion and then the second round of $1 billion also. So $2 billion, they got more money in Ohio. And again, that opened up opportunity. We have more people focused and looking on those areas to put those funds to work. And that's really where he went with this one. So again, he bought this thing obviously right. He's in this for very little amount of money. And this one played out a little bit different here. He worked with the hardest hit fund in this case, and they paid $25,000 to recast the loan. In other words, they tried to catch him up on a certain amount of the arrearage account. And again, for those not familiar, the arrearage account is that money that starts to accrue, and the penalties and interest and everything else from when you haven't made a payment. So if these folks hadn't made a payment in 2-3 years, they're building up that arrearage account. And what Ohio did in this case was pay enough, $25,000 here, to satisfy that, where the lender, which is Justin's, agrees to then to modify that loan. And the modification, again, reflected a different value of that property than you're seeing in the BPO. So he had to modify a $50,000 loan at 7% interest. So he forgave some of the debt on this because they actually owed more than the $50,000. Justin was paid $25,000 from the state to do that and to work with these folks to forgive that debt, restructure the loan at $50,000 and 7% to payments that they could afford. And those payments were about $387 per month. So once again, he's paying less than $4,000 in, get $25,000 back, and in this case, they had him just modify the loan. So he started collecting payments of $387.65. And you know what? Do you think the homeowners were happy about this whole thing? Do you think the homeowners were excited to be able to finally have something happen? And of course, the answer is obviously yes. They wanted to stay there.
Well, Kevin, you go back and look at the picture of the house, and the first thing that resonates with you is how beautiful their yard is, and they got their flags, and we call this emotional equity. This is their home, and you're right. Something bad happened to them. We don't know what it was, but there was money available. There was federal money available, hardest hit funds, and we're saying, well, why didn't the lender that originally had this loan, why didn't they go figure this out?
Exactly.
And recently, or a lot of people know that we had a feature article written about Note School, specifically mentioned you and I a lot in the article, written by the online version of the Wall Street Journal called Market Watch. And so this reporter who came to a class asked us, she said, what's the problem? And I said, the problem is these lenders have hundreds of thousands of loans like this, and they don't have the personnel or the touch factor to go connect with the customer and connect with the issue and solve the problem that an entrepreneur can solve. And this is a great example of this homeowner benefited from Justin being an entrepreneur. Don't worry about Justin. He made a ton of money. But he didn't make a ton of money because of the customer. The customer ends up with a loan that they can pay back, and Justin made a heck of a buy because this loan was sold in a big package, and he bought it at a stupid cheap price. And that's a market condition because, and you say, well, that's terrible. The lender lost all this money. Technically, what happened was, to be honest with you, that lender had charged that loan down, and when they sold that loan, they charged it down to zero. And when they sold that loan for $4,000, Kevin, they actually made $4,000 profit on their books. So it's kind of crazy, and I don't want to get too wrapped around the axle and how all that waterfall of why they sell at those prices and stuff. We do that in classes, and we don't spend the whole 3 days on it, but we make you understand. It's nice to understand why the market is what the market is. But the bottom line is what I see here is Justin was the entrepreneur that solved the consumer's problem.
Absolutely, and he was aware of the programs out there that could help all parties involved here, because this money will have to be spent by these states. It's designated for them to spend. In fact, the money they don't spend in these programs, they have to give back to the federal government rather than helping people in their local community. So they will use this money. It's just, again, the people who need this, they don't have the knowledge about these programs, and well, and quite frankly, most all real estate investors and note investors don't know about this program unless they're taught about it, which is obviously what we're doing here and doing our classes, as you said, and everything else. So it can be a tremendous benefit because, again, not only is the person in the home helped with this, but again, the community at large, because again, properties are being fixed up again, the taxes are being paid, and all these other benefits. But
Kevin, go back to that picture. Go back to that picture one more time. I just want to make sure I say it. Is that a Ohio State flag that guy's got in his front yard?
Buckeyes flag. Yep.
Yeah. Is that a 4-year school?
Now, how to win friends and influence people, Eddie. There you go.
Well, if everybody knows it, I went to a little junior college over in Fort Worth called Texas Christian University. So, I was, what I was going to say, and we don't know these people and we don't know their story, but you look at that yard and you look at that flagpole and it kind of makes a statement. I'm going to say that this, because of that guy being lucky enough for Justin to buy his note, he keeps flying his flag.
Yeah, that's very, very well said. And but Justin obviously did very well out of this also. He got the $25,000, that's a lump sum, but then he also has this note. So he owns this $50,000 loan that's paying him 7% interest per year secured by the property. And what he chose to do on this particular one is to season this note a little bit, and seasoning we just mean a payment history. So you can see that Justin collected 3 payments. Now, Justin could have collected all the remaining payments if that's what he chose to do, and that would have been great too. Passive monthly income, $387 a month. He's not a landlord, anything like that, and he could have just collected all of those remaining payments, which is well over hundreds of payments he could have collected. But in this case, what he decided to do was implement another technique, and that is to sell the remaining payments to another investor. Okay, these notes that we own, they simply represent an income stream over time, and we can sell all or part of that note to another investor, and that's what Justin did here. He sold the loan to an investor for $22,811 lump sum.
So the investor got a great deal.
They did, yeah. Investor, it's a win-win investment. I'd have to go back and recalculate those terms. I think there was just over 100, mid 150 or something payments.
Yeah, well, I mean, so, if they paid about $23,000 for about a $50,000 note. I don't need a calculator. They did pretty good.
Right, I got you.
I really don't need a calculator for Justin because he's got $25,000, and you're going to tell me what it is, aren't you?
I'm going to tell you right there. There you go.
Huh? Yeah, Justin did good.
Yeah, I think he did it right. Invested $3,700, basically got $48,000.
I still go back to my statement though that homeowner got lucky enough for Justin to buy his note.
Oh, absolutely. The homeowner staying in their home. That's obviously where they like to live. They like the neighborhood. They like everything. And you're absolutely right. It's win-win really for everybody. So the homeowner did good. Justin did good. The investor that bought this note from Justin, as you pointed out, they're paying $22,000 for a $50,000 loan. I mean, so obviously their yield is much higher than 7%. They're happy, and it just saved the family from going through foreclosure and everything else as well. So just win-win-win all the way around.
Now, we did say this was an extraordinary deal, didn't we, Kevin? I'm just trying to make sure that we didn't oversell that.
It is. Well, like I said, you look around at these enough, you learn the process, the due diligence, you learn the relationship between the numbers, and you do have some of these things pop out enough where, you know, you should see like a little flags going up in your head saying, you know what, this one is something I need to dig deeper into here and check some things out and play out these possibilities here. And absolutely.
And Justin, and honestly, you know, Kevin knows that Justin could have been a lot more creative in how he did this. He ended up making it pretty simple at the end, but there's some other creative techniques that he could have made more money out of it. And kind of knowing Justin's personality, you know, he's a quiet, modest guy, and he just probably said, you know what, I'm making enough.
Right.
And there would be strategies that you could pull more money out of this deal, and Justin knows how to do it. Don't think he doesn't know how to do it. He just, you know, sometimes he just says, that's enough.
Yeah, yeah.
That's enough profit.
Very good. All right, let's see what he did on this other one, shall we? This is another one in Ohio. El Raya? I'll go with El Raya. I'm not really sure on that. A little smaller home, 736 square feet, but once again, BPO in there about $13,000. They're saying quick sale, by the way, means if you had to sell it tomorrow, you know, or let's say within 30 days, $9,500. If you're going to put it on the market as is, 13. So we can call that valuation, you know, somewhere in the middle, $10,000. But same idea here. The BPO, for reasons we've already discussed, is suppressed. That works in favor for him buying this non-performing note. $2,459. Now, this one came with a little extra, and we didn't see that in the other two examples, but this one, they were behind in property taxes. And Eddie, as you're fully aware, of course, is we always in our classes talk about these three potential deal killers, and one of which is always going to be those property taxes, because property taxers in every state in the U.S., they jump to the front position. They're super liens, and in this case, he had some property taxes that had to be cured to make sure that he didn't lose his position, and that was another $4,000. So it was $2,400 to buy the note, $4,000 in property taxes, and the difference in this one was that this was a vacant home. The two other examples that we looked at, the people were still living in the home. They weren't making the payments, but they were still living in the home, and both of them, as we talked about, showed emotional equity where they wanted to stay in the home. These folks had had enough. They got tired of the limbo position of not hearing back from banks and wondering what's going to happen, to the point where they just threw up their hands and said, well, we're out of here, and just left. And therefore, property taxes get unpaid and all of those other aspects. So he paid $2,459 for the note, but he had to cure that property tax issue to maintain his senior position. That was another $4,000. And then he was able to acquire this property through a deed in lieu. And a deed in lieu, for those who don't know, is short for deed in lieu of foreclosure. It's a way that the homeowner can voluntarily surrender the deed to the property without going through the foreclosure and having that on the record, but also having that debt forgiven. And so it's a voluntary surrender of the deed of the property. And that's how he acquired this property, which these folks kept in good shape. And in fact, he only had to put $2,000 in renovations once he acquired the property. And heck, that's carpet and paint and that kind of thing. That's really, really simple renovation. So his all-in, if you will, was $8,459, paid $2,459 for the note.
And Kevin, this is I like how you built it up. So the first one is like $500. Oh my God, right? The second one is, you know, this beautiful occupied house with that Ohio State flag and the American flag, a beautiful deal, and they're occupying it. And now you got this deal. And Justin knows that it could cost $3,500 or $4,000 in legal fees to foreclose in Ohio, and it could take 10 months. It could take a year, depending on what county it's in. And Justin knows that, and you're going, oh my God, if that would have happened, he would have had he would have had the whole value of the house tied up in buying the note and paying the taxes and renovations and whatever. And I'll guarantee you there wasn't ever a stutter step when Justin bought this deal. He understood the math completely, and he knew that he could walk himself out of this deal because he knew he was never going to call the realtor and say, go sell this house for $13,000.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the BPO was a pricing mark that allowed him the strike price that he paid for it. But the reality is he knew it was way worth more than $13,000.
No question.
So he ended up with $8,500 in it. He could have ended up with $13,000 in it. It wouldn't have made any difference. It would have affected his profit a little bit. But it's like this is kind of a different level. We've kind of gone from the crazy obvious to the wow, what a great, and now all of a sudden deal number 3 becomes more like you know, this is kind of what Note School does. You know, it's like, when do you see a deal in the middle of something that some people would pass on? A lot of people would have passed on this deal because of the math.
Mm-hmm.
So what did he do with it?
Well, after the big extensive $2,000, I'm still trying to figure out what he did for the $2,000. I'd like to get a breakdown of that. What did you? How's nothing? I mean, that's crazy. And before I show you what I mean, there is a perception, though. There's some people think, oh, the houses they leave, they're going to be in horrible shape. And look, that'll happen from time to time, but that is not always the case. A lot of these folks will just go, you know what, we're done. We're just tired of the pressure. We're tired of not knowing what's going to happen. We need to move on with our lives. And they clean up and they move, and that's that. So anyhow,
about half the defaulted notes we see are vacated properties.
Right. So after all of this, he turned around and sold the property for $49,900.
Well, I think that's going to turn out okay for him.
Now, look, he had to sell this property, and he wanted to attract the most potential buyers that he possibly could. This house being sold for less than $50,000 is very difficult, if not impossible, for a lot of people to get loans on because of the restrictions that Dodd-Frank has made as to how much banks can make on originating a loan. They did it on a percentage basis, and the bank would actually lose money originating a loan like this, so a lot of them are just not doing that business. But if you look through the paper here, because I just pulled this from public records, he sold this with seller financing, and that was the big difference here. He took $3,500 down. It's right here. I'm going to try to circle that with my mouse there. $3,500 down, and then they created a note for the rest, $46,400, and they set an interest rate here of 12% per year, and you can see the payments that are on there also. So he sold this property, but he sold it also on terms.
Yeah, and 12% is a high interest rate, but the reality is this customer's monthly payment to own their home is $675 a month. And what would this house rent for, Kevin?
I knew you were going to ask me, and I was looking at those slides. I'm going, the one property I forgot to pull the rent on is the one that we're looking at right now. I'll try to find it in the background as you're talking, but I bet you could probably ballpark it.
850, 800.
Yeah.
So here's the bottom line. This is once again, you could probably order 10 BPOs and get a range of anywhere, the house being worth anywhere from $12,000 to $40,000, just cash sales, right? And we see this all the time. But Justin knew that if a house in the nice neighborhood, it has a rentable value of anywhere from $700 to $800 a month, he could find a consumer that he can make a homeowner. That, by the way, the people that bought this house and paid $3,500 down, the only way they're going to be a homeowner is if Justin owner finances it for them. They can't pay cash. They can't get a mortgage loan. And so Justin enabled this person to, instead of making them a tenant and making them just pay $700 or $800 rent a month, he did what? He offered owner financing, and he said, you pay a $3,500 down payment, and I'm going to owner finance it for you. And at the end of the thing, instead of just saying I paid rent for 20 years, you pay on this for 20 years, and what do you end up with? A free and clear house as the homeowner. So, and this is where seller financing fills such a crazy big gap in the market, because the person that would buy this house has no other choice. There's really nothing else they could do. I mean, they've got to go be able to work with the seller and get them to carry the financing for them, because they can't go down to the bank and get a mortgage. And you say, well, what if they have good credit? And what if they have good job stability? Yes. They can't go to the bank and get a mortgage because, as Kevin said, mortgage company can't make a $45,000 loan and charge 1.5% or 1% or whatever the cap rate is on their fees. They can't make the fee income that Dodd-Frank allows them to make. There's no way they can afford to make a mortgage on this house and come out and make a profit. I mean, so what's happened to mortgage companies is they've walled off making small loans, and this has become, Washington has become aware of this, but seller financing came to the rescue and fixed this deal. Clearly, this is, the buyer paying $50,000 for this house is not overpaying, and they end up with home ownership instead of being a tenant. And once again, where did Justin benefit? Well, Justin benefited because he found a big pile of these notes that he could go pick off some of these notes and buy. And we connected him with a resource that he could do that. And once again, this is an extraordinary story. So we're not saying every deal is this good. We're just saying, obviously, this was a good deal, and we hadn't fudged any of the numbers in Justin's deal. But once again, I like what you did here, Kevin. You kind of took the last transaction, and it's a little bit more like you had to pencil it correctly, because theoretically you could have had more money in it than the original realtor said the house was worth. And right. that's where a savvy factor comes in. It's like, well, I get the fact they said it's worth $13,000 on a BPO, but you and I know that house is worth more than $13,000.
Right, and I did look up the rent while you were talking there, and we're looking at, based on 15 other 3-bedroom rentals in the area within 0.65 miles, so within about a half mile away, this house will rent for $750 a month.
Dang, that's a pretty good guess, wasn't it?
So $750 a month, their payments are $675. It's cheaper for them to own than it is to rent on this one, plus the other benefits that they have. And that's why that 12%, where Eddie was saying, 12%, yeah, it looks like a high interest rate loan, and it is. It's not bank rates, but again, these folks can't get bank rates. So this is what they're pricing it out. It's still cheaper than renting. And of course, if they are down the road a little bit, and now whatever their circumstances are, and they do come up with money, or they do want to refinance, if that's possible down the road at some point in time, they can always pay this loan off through a refi and adjust from there. So yeah, in this case, as far as Justin, the note investor, goes, he was in for 8,000 something, right? And he came back, and what was that? 8,500 basically. Yeah. He came back and got $3,500 down, and now he's collecting $675 per month. But again, that is without being a landlord. Justin doesn't own the property anymore. He sold this property, but he used a contract called a land installment. That's where he put the seller financing aspect in there. So he is acting as the bank and just collecting that passive monthly income.
That's it. Owner financing to the rescue.
There you go. So you want to see a little tally here I put together?
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
So total for these 3 deals. On the left, I got total investments and expenses, and the right, I have total returns. So of these 3 deals that he submitted in to us here, his all-out was $12,716. That's what he made in total for all 3 of those investments. His returns, $87,000. plus that's all lump sum, plus he's collecting $675 per month on that land contract. 3 small deals.
And once again, I want to emphasize, as Kevin has, that we're not saying that you can get in the business and buy only 3 deals and find 3 jackpot deals that the math's going to work exactly like this.
Correct.
That would probably be ridiculous if somebody
That's
thought
an
they could do.
unrealistic expectation. Yeah.
But the reality is most every fisherman that catches a trophy giant fish, Kevin, has been fishing more than once.
You bet.
And so the idea is, what we want to help you do is to figure out how to go fish, where to fish, what kind of bait to use, figuratively speaking, of course, so that you have a sense of knowing how to do it. Now, part of the reason Justin made more money than the average note buyer would is Justin used smart techniques that I don't see other people buying distressed notes that necessarily know the whole way of how to do that. You saw him utilize hardest hit funds. You saw him utilize owner financing. You saw him utilize creating a note and selling the note. So he's used a lot of techniques here that are more than just straight up traditional buying a note at a percentage of BPO and turn around and selling it at BPO value, right? He used more innovative techniques than that, and as a result of it, obviously, you see that's why the math worked the way it was. So. Great job on the curriculum there, Mr. Shortell. Real clear picture of how all this worked.
Thank you very much. And I think another just little point here, something you said triggered this thought process. And I say this all the time in our live trainings, which is I don't think anybody comes to our events looking to learn how to buy a note. They're looking to learn how to buy this on a repeatable basis. They're looking to invest for a longer period of time, and that's where the maturing in the business and learning these sorts of things, there's no question that the more that you get seasoned into this and the more that you talk through these deals like we do on these webinars and others, of course, that you and I do, talking through these deals and getting the flavor of what can be done in the business, there's no question that that's what enables investors like Justin to recognize the potential of these deals, and they start seeing more of these type of opportunities coming in front of them simply because they've learned through experience themselves, but the experience of other people has shortened that learning curve, so they know what to start to look for and get a real flavor of the business.
So I'll do a little bit of expounding on what we do. We have 2 classes. We have a 3-day class on buying non-performing notes. We call it Big Money from Bad Debts. We have a class on buying performing notes or creating performing notes. You've seen 2 of the 3 analogies here that Justin did where he did that. And trust me, we can get a lot more creative in how we go about that. And that's called Rich Rewards. Rich Rewards and Real Estate Notes is the name of that class. So they're both 3-day classes. They have kind of a home study base with them, and then obviously the live class. And then if you want to be in the business and you want to say, well, where could I actually get to go meet a rock star like a Justin Wagner? The answer would be there are going to be a lot of rock stars like Justin Wagner types, and they're going to be at Note Expo. And Note Expo will be November 4th and 5th, Kevin, be at the Fort Worth Convention Center in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so it is not a note school, is one of the sponsors of the event, but this isn't a note school event. It's just an industry trade show. And so that's something that, in my mind, if you're intrigued about the business, you ought to do it. And then obviously, we're always happy to see you come to note school and do a class and all that stuff. And I can tell you some funny stories about Justin's early days in the business. and now Justin, my long friend, is a rock star, but I had to pick him up a time or two, believe it or not.
Mhm.
He's you know this is he brings this up when he talks to people. You know, he was struggling, and I made him thicken his skin a little bit and said, look, you're going to be an entrepreneur. You're going to have to grind your way through this a little bit. And as a result, as you heard us say earlier, he's bought several hundred assets. He's a great guy. He knows how to make money, but he cares about the people that he's out there doing these workouts with. That guy's pretty yard and the flag in that front yard, that means something to Justin. He gets the fact that at the end of the day, he understood how to go facilitate the hardest hit funds relationship and get that guy some money that obviously he didn't know how to get, and he'd probably been delinquent for years, and it's clearly people that owned the note before him, the servicing company that had it, wasn't locked in on the opportunity for the homeowner, and Justin saw the opportunity and it made sense. So, Mr. Shortell, you're awesome.
Well, so are you, sir. Well, very well said there, and it's a good way to wrap this one up. So it's always fun to get on here and talk through these, and just enjoy talking about talking about these and what everybody's been able to accomplish for all the different webinars that we do. So
Yeah.
excellent.
No school's real big on case studies. We'll go take we'll go take a scenario like this and we'll pull it up. We'll go find it on a list of loans, a spreadsheet, which the industry calls a tape, which is just a list of loans like this. And then we'll pull it up and pull out information and pull out the BPO and do all this analogy. And so Kevin kind of took you through a really fast forward, but we like case studies because we learned it's a more comprehensive way to learn. You can remember it better, and so we like this style, and Kevin does an awesome job of helping the audience kind of learn in the style that he does it in this manner. So you guys have a great day. It's awesome
Thanks,
you
everybody.
attended, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Note Expo, Note Expo, Note Expo. And then obviously we'd love to see you at a class if you'd consider that. See you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye now.